A rather fascinating material called Flubber can be made using these two simple compounds. In the box I have borax, which is often used in laundry. It's a chemical that really helps to clean many things. And secondly, I've got a bottle here of common white glue, often used in schools. We need to make up two solutions. I've taken some of the borax and added about 3 grams of the borax to 75 milliliters of water. That's about a spoonful like this in 75 mils of water. It's not a critical amount. So we'll let that dissolve a little bit. Then I'll take some glue and we'll pour out about 100 mils of glue. You can just do that using a beaker. And you can use the gradations right on the beaker. So there we have 100 mils of glue. So to the 100 mils of glue, I add about 75 milliliters of water. And again, we just use the gradations on the beaker. So we're up to about 175 mils now. And then we'll just wipe off the spoon and use that to stir the glue so that it becomes a uniform solution. And you can see what we're doing is essentially just thinning the glue. Okay, then we'll pour the glue into a disposable container. It's a bit hard to clean up afterwards if you do it right in the beaker, so I would recommend you do it in something like a margarine container. The glue can be easily rinsed out of the beaker as long as it's dry, as long as it's still wet. Then we'll take the borax solution. It hasn't completely dissolved. We'll take it anyway, and we'll add that to the glue solution with stirring. And as I stirred, we get a rather thick, sticky material in the container here. And you can see it's very rubbery. We'll just keep mixing a little bit. We can then take the rubbery mass out of the container and work it with our hands. It's a rather slimy, messy material, although you can see it dripping a little bit. You might want to wash it off under the tap. Now watch what happens to it when it just lies here. It just slowly flows and collapses into a sort of a flat mass. If I show the back side of it, it's rather smooth. We can take this and we can stretch it. Notice how rubbery it becomes and elastic. We can squish it together and make a ball out of it. And you can throw the ball around. You'll feel that it really vibrates when you move it back and forth between your hands like this. Then we'll just lay it down on the counter. And notice how it collapses again. Flubber is an abbreviation for flowing rubber. And when you leave it by itself, it just gradually flows out. But what is this material? Well, the glue itself contains a polymer called polyvinyl acetate. And that's in a water emulsion. The borax contains sodium borate. When we mix the two together, the borate ions join some of the polyvinyl acetate polymers, and these are long molecules, they get joined together into a three-dimensional network. And it's these polymers that are joined together that make the material so rubbery. They can stretch in 3 dimensions. If you pull it quickly, it comes apart like this. If you draw it out slowly, it will stretch. And hence the term flowing rubber or flubber. And this material behaves in some ways like a solid or a liquid. It flows, but it doesn't flow rapidly. I'll take about half of the flubber that I've prepared and stretch it out a little bit and lay it on top of the bottle that I have. It's a mason jar, so we'll just lay it on top of there for a while. And then we'll see what happens to that. The other piece we'll just make into a ball. And we'll just let that lay for a while as well. After about 10 minutes, notice how the flubber that I put on the bottle has actually flowed down the sides and into the bottle. And we actually have some air trapped inside, which is resulting in a bubble on top. The other flubber, which I placed as a ball on the counter, has actually spread out gradually to form kind of a pancake. And you can actually see some of the flubber hanging down in the bottle as it drips. And you can see that there's characteristics of both a solid and a fluid. It will flow, but only slowly. Flubber itself is good for a couple of days. It will dry out if you leave it exposed to air. I have here a sample of flubber that I prepared a couple of days ago. It's still rubbery, but it's lost much of its elasticity and it doesn't flow nearly as well. The flubber itself has quite a bit of water trapped in the structure of the polymers, and that's also one reason why it kind of feels wet and cold when you feel it. Once it dries out, it can be disposed of just in a normal solid waste container. The materials that are used here are non-toxic. The white glue itself is a non-toxic glue, and borax itself is also non-toxic. Obviously, students should not ingest these substances, but it is safe to play with them, and it's a good idea, of course, to wash your hands after you're finished playing with this material. Have fun with it.